Okay, hi. So before we start our interview, I was just wondering on what do you know about our Address Teen Stress project?
I just came across it on Instagram and I just thought it was a great um awareness movement to get mental health more accessible to teens, destigmatize mental health, just make it approachable of a topic and get people to understand that it's common, it happens, and that help is available.
Exactly. So yeah, Address Teen Stress is a mental health initiative. I'm one of the founders. My name is Alba. Nice to meet you. And basically, we spread awareness by interviewing individuals, health professionals like you, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, to get their perspective on mental health among teens, but also talking to teens to share their own personal mental health stories. So we just kind of created that platform. So yeah. So,
Yeah,
my first question to you is, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your background?
sure. So my name is Nguyen, kind of like Mulan without the moo. Um, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I currently have my own private practice, and I primarily serve um, AAPI and BIPOC millennials, I would say. And my focus is generally on intergenerational trauma. So the effects of that could be people pleasing, imposter syndrome, um, in like indecisiveness, could be a lot of just not being assertive and not really having direction. So a lot of clients that I've worked with don't know what career they want to really have. They don't feel like they have a voice at times, and I'm helping them to get confident, get authentic, and feel empowered. Um, I started my private practice. It's actually only been about 7 months, but I've been able to help. I think currently I have 50 clients. I don't see them all weekly, but I've noticed that I've already had some kind of graduate, and I've been able to help couples. I would like to work with more men in particular. I want to start helping men with dating and assertiveness and confidence. And so I have something in the works for that. Um, but yeah, my passion for mental health issues really started from my own experience. Um, yeah, I could go into that if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, I have my own struggles with mental health. I take antidepressants. I've been taking antidepressants for like a decade now. Um, I was first diagnosed with major depressive disorder when I was about, it was on my 14th birthday. And so from that moment on, I really felt like it started a whole self-healing journey. I wasn't sure what it meant. My parents didn't really know what it meant. We were all trying to figure it out, but I had really struggled with, you know, eating, sleeping, concentrating, feeling awful about myself. Yeah, to the point of like not wanting to live at times. But I really do think I was able to get the right help. And I do think a big reason why I am here right now is because I worked with a licensed clinical social worker um, that had really helped me in my healing. And I really attribute a lot of my healing to her. And that's where, I didn't really consider licensed marriage and family therapists because I didn't really have many contacts with them. It was really a licensed clinical social worker that helped me.
Would you say that's kind of the reason why you decided to become one yourself is because of your own background and
Yeah, definitely. I do think there's kind of been like a full circle moment um, of feeling like I was meant to go into this so that the pain, the struggle, all of that that I had gone through wouldn't be, for nothing. It would serve a purpose, and I could really help others and I have maybe a greater capacity to empathize. So I did see that more than other people, people would open up to me, and I had so many people in my teenage years tell me that they were struggling with depression. And I didn't really understand why it happened, but I thought of it as a gift, I guess, like a calling. So I really took that to heart.
That's awesome. So, on your resume, you mentioned that you try to continue on ongoing education by attending to different kinds of workshops, classes, and trainings. So, what kind of knowledge have you gained from going to those, and has it made a difference in your practice?
Yeah, definitely. I do think a big portion of my training, I am certified in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. Um, I used that quite a bit with when I was working more with teens. And so I used that quite a bit. It was very helpful in allowing them to recreate the narrative about their traumatic, past. So they would at least be able to kind of rewrite the story and feel agency about their story, about their identity, about their experiences. I've also attended a lot of different ones related to somatic practices in therapy. I've also attended some on like what is EMDR and how would that be used. Um, I would eventually like to be EMDR trained and certified one day so I can really address trauma from a different kind of lens. But currently, my only certification and training is really in the trauma focused CBT.
So, what do you think right now is the number one issue that you've helped treat among your clients?
I think a big one that I've noticed probably between all of my clients is anxiety. Whether it be, they have full-blown panic attacks, or maybe they just feel anxious around other people, or maybe in social settings. That's a really ongoing, sort of topic. I feel anxious at my workplace. I feel anxious in um, settings with new people. I feel anxious around boys. I feel anxious around, strangers. So I do think anxiety is a huge one. I have a client who feels anxious about driving because of a car accident. I have others that feel anxious um, based on maybe past experiences with the opposite sex. So there have just been a lot of those sorts of kind of overlap. Yeah, anxiety is really huge.
And then when it comes to anxiety and stress, how do you think like that causes a difference in a teenager's body?
Oh, we talk about this all the time. Usually we trace their anxiety back to their childhood. So even as young as, 7, um, they could probably pick up on ways that they've already kind of perceived the world and then adapted. But chronic stress in children and in adolescents is so damaging. They're still growing. So anxiety at a very young age, I feel like even for myself, um, really kind of like short-circuited my brain a little bit so that I was a little more prone to depression. So when I get depressed, I get anxious. I'm generally not an anxious person unless the depression is there. So I do think anxiety, there's good anxiety and there's bad anxiety. When you have like chronic bad anxiety, it's unmanageable, it's unrelenting, it is disproportionate to the event. That's when you're having like, diagnoses like major depressive disorder, or that's when you're having panic attacks, or that's when you're having it affect your eating, and maybe there's some disordered eating. So, especially with teens, I think it's so, so difficult because maybe it's normalized if they're, in a high functioning or really high performing family. Maybe they've normalized a high level of anxiety, or maybe among their friends, it's something they don't talk about. So I think how it changes and kind of sets up a trajectory of fear is really, really damaging. And I know so many of my adult clients that are still um, facing the consequences of like, years and years of just feeling anxious. They might have insomnia. They might be struggling at their workplace.
So we saw that most of the degrees that you have is based on or based in California. So
Mhm.
what was your reason behind moving to Texas? Was it like a career thing or something like that?
Yeah, it's not quite a career thing. My practice can be faith-based. So I do identify as Christian. And then because of our faith, my husband and I, we felt a calling to move to Texas to support a new church being built. And so that was primarily why um, I even moved to Texas. And so that's why my practice started only about 7 months ago, because I was waiting to know where I was going to end up. So I'm dual licensed in both states, but that's pretty much it. It was, call it a God thing.
Awesome. So what tips do you have back to the whole anxiety and stress thing to like individuals struggling with that stress and anxiety?
Well, I know a big part of it is social media. A lot of my clients struggle with comparison. So their anxiety only shoots up and gets even worse when they're on social media scrolling a whole time. I do think we give our phones way too much power over what kind of things that we look at and what kind of things we think about throughout the day. Um, Especially if they're having trouble with sleep, anxiety will definitely mimic a lot of the symptoms of like just having a lot of caffeine, right? You feel jittery, you feel jumpy, you can't relax. So if you drink caffeine, you're drinking a lot of soda, or you drink coffee, I would say that's not going to help your anxiety. So maybe be mindful of cutting that, back a little bit. Also, screen time, using so much of your phones. Maybe you watch a lot of scary movies. Maybe you watch the news before you go to sleep. There's usually not a lot of good news happening, so that could kind of create an environment for like nightmares and things like that as you're trying to go to sleep. Maybe your mind is racing. So some tips about that would be maybe um, reserving your nighttime hours for things that are calming and soothing. So nothing kind of like scary, nothing kind of maybe even just cutting out the news at late at night. But I would also recommend maybe getting blue light filtering glasses, so that blue light stimulates your brain into thinking that it's daytime. So um, cutting and reducing the amount of screen time you have before bedtime is useful. I wrote a whole blog post about tips for a better night's rest on my website, and that could be useful. But a lot of what I'm saying, even like coffee flavored things might have traces of caffeine. Chocolate has caffeine, certain teas have caffeine. So being mindful of what you're consuming, whether it be physically, like what you're eating, or just even like what you're consuming through your eyes as you're just scrolling and scrolling on your phone.
What do you think are some common misconceptions on the topic of therapy and the topic of mental health?
Oh, this is huge. I was just talking to someone about this, and they felt like therapy was embarrassing. They said that, oh, am I really doing that badly that I need to go to therapy? Um, and that was, someone that is a little bit older, but I was thinking that's a common thought I have even with clients that I currently work with. They might feel ashamed that they're meeting with me, or they feel like they don't want to be there. or they need to kind of prove to themselves that they're healthy enough to like get out of therapy. I do think a big misconception about therapy is that it's for people that are crazy or people that are really, really like in crisis. I would say think of therapy like a car maintenance kind of checkup. It's I would appreciate a lot of my clients coming to me, and some of them do, for more of a preventative, like the same way you go to your doctor for a checkup and you don't go to them when you're like in an emergency. Um, Ideally, yeah, that's what I would hope a lot of my clients come to me. I think of it, it's just like I've told my younger clients, it's kind of like a doctor checkup for your brain and for your feelings. The same way you would go to your doctor to get a physical, maybe that's the same way you might have to look at it, or maybe the dentist, right? You go to the dentist, maybe it's not pleasant, but you know it's good for you and it's preventative unless you're waiting until you have a toothache. But the idea is we want to kind of have these supports in place before a crisis happens. Of course, there are therapists for crisis sort of settings, but I do think of therapy as being completely helpful. It's like a sounding board, even if you didn't feel like you had like a crisis, um, you could just appreciate having a professional's opinion, someone that doesn't know you, but can still provide you with unconditional positive regard, and they can be a sounding board for your thoughts, maybe point out your blind spots. They could coach you through different um, difficult relationships. They can guide you through learning some skills.
My last question to you is what advice would you give to somebody that's struggling, or just what advice would you give to our Just Teen Stress audience?
Great question. I think mainly I would emphasize just like an openness to getting help or asking for help. Um, as hard as that may be, you may think of your friends when they ask for help, you may be like, wow, thank you for sharing. I'm so glad you asked for help. I do think a lot of people, when they see other people ask for help, they're they admire them. They think of them as strong. And so I think it would be really nice if everyone thought of themselves as being strong when they ask for help. And I do think that's a really, really um, courageous quality to have, just to be able to admit, hey, I am struggling, or I'm not sure what to do. I think I might need a little bit more support here. I think that's a really amazing and admirable quality that I hope that your teens that, are on this platform are able to recognize, hey, it's not weak to ask for help. It's actually it's a superpower. It's a strength.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for speaking to us about therapy and about your story and everything like that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
my last request to you is if you could send us some photos of you to post on your social media and also to like let us know one fun fact. You don't have to tell us right now, but one fun fact about you. Let me give you some examples. In the past, somebody said that they need to put 3 hot sauces on everything they eat. Somebody
Mm,
in car, someone else lives in a van, just something like
mm.
something interesting.
I think I have one.
Okay.
Um, in the past year, I've picked up tattooing.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I've tattooed maybe like 10, 15 people.
Oh, okay. So you do it to other people. Oh, that's cool.
Oh, I also gave it to myself. Like I have one like right here. It's a semicolon for the semicolon project against, it's raising awareness for suicide prevention.
That's awesome. I love that. But yeah, thank you so much for coming, and I really appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, of
Thank you.
course.
Have a
Bye.